Yofi. Okay. Shkaya, thank you everybody for coming. Very exciting that everybody's here. I sent her like that.
Okay, you have the.
Yeah, she got it.
Great.
And okay. So so the concrete challenge that I'd like to discuss, let's try to see if we could focus on, is what to do with the plethora of Alanei Shabbat that we end up, or even video these printed materials, right, for this year. This one does include Shemot. What?
Oh,
it does.
Oh, it has. Oh, wow. Yeah.
Okay. Well, there we go. Okay. So.
Without listening.
So right. So what do we do with
So they want to throw your book.
So that's one thing that I'd like to discuss. The other Shiloh that I'd like to discuss is newspapers. Everybody, I'm sure a lot of people here get, for example, Head Year, right? They give out all over town with the lots and lots of advertisements, and they also usually stick in like one or two Torah here and there. So what do we do with these kinds of alonim and what's their status? Okay, so let's get started. So source number one, is psukim from Dvarim, and we have a mitzvah to destroy all makumis of avodah zara. Abed Dun is called makumis asher av shamagayim asher term shemay v'chulei. And then we have the very last phrase, Loi tasun kain l'Hashem Elokechem. Oh, there we go. Shem Hashem. Loi tasun kain l'Hashem Elokechem. Right? We're not allowed to do that to Hashem. So what exactly is this referring to? So let's have a look at the Rambam. Source number 2. The Rambam says that Kol ha'ma'abed shem and Hashem es hakadoshim ha'torim and shenikru b'hem hakadosh baruch hu loikem en ha'torah. Shari Oimer Bavid Zar Vibat Shmam Kasum Ken Lashem Kechem. The name of Hashem get Malchus for. And so what exactly does it apply to? So 7 Shemais, Halach Lamaisa, the Kesses HaSofer. Kesses HaSofer is a sefer written by the same author as the Kitzur Shulchan Aruch. It's the authoritative sefer on everything that has to do with Siva Stam, right? Sofer, in order to get certified by the Vad Mishper Stam, has to know the Kesses HaSofer backwards and forwards, especially the 3 sifim that apply to everything that has to do with Ksivas Hashem. So he's the authoritative Paisik on Ksivas Hashem, and he expands this to 10 shemas. So we have 10 shemas, which are usher to be moichek, and if we're moichek one of those shemas, then a person is chayiv malchus. So now, what exactly does this apply to, right? When are these shemas? When do these shemas have kedusha to the extent that they are considered to be usher to be nimchak? So let's have a look at source number 3, the Sefer Yereim. Sefer Yereim is one of the Rishonim. He says, "Im kasav oisir shel shem v'loy niskaven lekadsham." A person did not have kavana for kedusha when he wrote the shemas. Ain't behem kedusha, so they don't have kedusha. Keditanya and Perak Habayna, as the Gemara says in Shabbos. Ella kavanas kedusha be'inon. We need kavanas kedusha when a person writes the Shem Hashem with taima, and the reason is to be called davar hatoli b'kedusha, anything which is tali in kedusha be'inon kavana. So we need kavana. And this is taka the way Soifrim write Sefer Torah or Stam. When a Sofer writes Stam, so every time he gets to Shem Hashem, so he pauses and he says Henuni Kaisa the Shem Kedusha Hashem, and then he writes the Shem. And and if a Sofer doesn't do that, so then the Shem is besafik. So now Lamaisa, the reason why by a Sofer we have to say it in Peh is because we want to be machmir to the full extent. We want to make sure that 100% it has kedusha. But al kopanim, just like we paskin in general, that we'll see this also later in the Ein Yitzchak, a person who's writing a shem stam. So the stam kavanah is that he's writing a b'kedusha, and that shem would also be included in the isser of mechika. But al kopanim, we need a certain level of kavanah in order for the shem to have kedusha. And this we see in source number 4. And source number 4 is also from the Kesef Sefer. And this is B'didi Havuvda. This happened to me one time when I was writing a Megillah. So I got up to the word Hayuhudim and Hayuhudim. And instead of writing Hayuhudim, I wrote Hey Yud Kevavke. And then I almost had a heart attack, and I went to
Yud Vav. In other words, you're writing Hey Yud Vav Hey.
right.
You should have written a Dalet.
I should have written a Dalet. I shouldn't have put it.
So you really just added a foot.
Right. I
That was what you
added in the Yud into the inside of the Dalet, and I was thinking I'm writing Hayuhudim, and then all of a sudden instead of the Dalet I wrote a Hey, right? So now we have on a Megillah, which is not supposed to have any Shemus Kedoshim, we have Hey Yud Kei Vav Kei. So I took the Megillah to Rav Avram Friedlander, who was the head of the Vad Mishmer Stam Yerushalayim, and he opened up Mefurish Kesef Sefer right over here, source number 4. So he says, "Hayitzarach lichtav Yehuda."
Why are you supposed to know the Kesef Sefer backwards and forwards?
And a Chanami,
And a Chanami. Lost the certification. That's it. That's how we ended up here.
Hayitzarach lichtav Yehuda, v'gam niskaven lichtav Yehuda, v'ta v'loy hitel by Dalid. Right? He didn't make the Dalet. He wrote the Hey. Yisles Hadalid Milamala. So what does this mean? Is if you have the word, so for example, you'd have Yud Ke Vav Ke, and right between the Vav and the Hey, you'd put the Dalet on top. So that was a more common practice. I guess back in the day, people used to do Tliya. So it says the Kesef Sefer, V'achshav shalei nagu b'Tliya v'yesh lachash pen. Today, we're not noyig to do tliya, right? You never see in a Sefer Torah something written on top.
Actually, but did have Ovda? We were laning in Meir Sharm Shtibach, and we saw a word that was like in a totally different shura. So and we were like, it was second day of Yom Tov.
Was it a very old Sefer Torah?
It was an old Sefer Torah.
There you go.
But we were just it was the second day Yom Tov, and we had overslept the Mir, so we're davening Meir Sharm Shtibach. I with no idea like what is kosher Sefer. So I remember the guy was down the block, or so one of them went down to Monastim in English, and he said,
"It's clear."
Put it
right?
somewhere else.
Clear,
it looked like we're from the Nephilim.
So we have a special halacha b'Shem Sektoshim that you're not allowed to be Torah Shem. That's because of the cover of the Shem. But that was a regular practice that people used to do be Torah. But that's exactly what the Kesef Sefer is talking about. That now that we're not noyeg, yesh lachosh pen k'shetei yukra hakari es Hashem. Right, a person is going to read it. He's not going to realize this is Tli. He's going to read Shem Hashem, and that's it's going to be Shem Shemayim Levatola. Kasher hu alkein bila achar shetola sadalad yigroid esahei. So now that you wrote the Daled, so it's no longer the word Yud Ke Vav Ke. Now you have the word Yehuda. So now you can erase the last Hey, erase the Daled, move the Daled down, and put the Hey, and then.
Why does he say you need to write the Daled before you erase?
So once you wrote the Daled, it's no longer the word Yud Ke Vav Ke. That in itself, Ba'atzim, is an act of Mechika. And Taka today, we're not knowing to do even Tliyas Daled. When I went to Reverend Friedlander, he showed me. He told me I should just erase the Hey. And that's in the Sefer Mishnah Seifrim.
Hey, you just erase the yud to make it into a dalet?
No. That would be Chak Toches. That's another halacha in Hilchas Tam.
So you couldn't erase and that was a Hey. So you couldn't erase just the foot.
You can't erase the foot. That's Chak Toches.
That would you have to write it.
You have to write it out. That would create a dalet through erasure, and that's not.
Sounds like a sukkah.
Even from Megillah.
Right, what?
Even from Megillah.
Yeah. Chak Toches is Naksiva. So, so today in the Mishnah Seifrim, which is a sefer from Rav Stern, who's a Talmud of Rav Wosner, and also one of the big authorities in Stam. So he also writes that today we're not knowing to be Taylor the Dalin, just erase the Hay and so that right. That's it for our Chabur. That's exactly what's negea. The point is that when a person has no kavana, when a person certainly has negative kavana, so then there's no kedusha to the shame.
You meant to write Yehuda. You didn't mean to write
exactly, and so it doesn't have any kedusha.
So if we took black paper and white ink, and that the template, whatever, inverted, then there's no question, no shadow.
No.
That's
so that's
no?
that's so the Kesef Sefer is already another subject, but it's very interesting. The Kesef Sefer discusses what's with the Mechikas Hashem, a shame that was written to Chak Toches. Meaning, let's say I had black and I erased and I removed some of the black and created a shame. So is that an Isra of Mechikas Hashem or not? So he says from the pasuk itself, you could know that it's aser.
That's not writing though.
It's not writing, but even still, from the pasuk itself, you can be mechiach that it's still going to be
It
aser.
says "Lo sasun."
What does it say?
The
Lo
word
sasun. It says lo sasun ken Hashem lekechem. You're not allowed to do the same thing to Hashem lekechem. What were you destroying by the way, Zara? Psile Elohim. Psile Elohim. Right? It's psila. It's chakika. Right? That's what you have to destroy, and don't do that to Shem Hashem. We extend that to Ksivas Shem Hashem, but the point is,
even though it's not a ksiva, it's supposed to Shem Hashem.
that's right.
You have to
That's
say
right.
the word fort to explain the contract. Yeah.
So Al Kopanim, what do we see? We see that a shame which was written b'kedusha, which means a shame that was written with a certain amount of kavana, or at least was written stam, the kavana of
Not
being
with
Shem Hashem.
anti-kavana.
Now with anti-kavana, has kedusha shame, and on that there's going to be an issur daraisa to be moshek. Okay, so now that we've established the parameters of the issur daraisa itself, so what about kisvei kodesh? So let's look at source number 5. This is the Rambam in Sefer HaMitzvahs on our issur that we're discussing. The Rambam says, "Shehizharnu minetoitz umiavoid bate avodas hakel." We're not allowed to destroy the Beis Hamikdash. Me'abed Sifrei HaNevuah, and we're not allowed to destroy Sifrei HaNevuah. Shelo nimchak es Hashem hanichbadim v'adom lezeh. Right, we're not allowed to destroy Shem Hashem. So from the Rambam, it would seem that the Rambam is including the issur of mechikas kisvei hakodesh in the issur daraisa of mechikas Hashem. And then, in fact, if we look at source number,
Wait, but it's because they're Shem Kedushas? Like if I wanted to erase just a non-Shem Shem is that an issue? Is that an
very good. That very good. I'm going to leave that purposely ambiguous for a moment, okay? But let's just skip to source number 10 and have a look at the Magen Avram. So the Magen Avram is mechiach from this Rambam that the same thing applies to Sefer Kodesh. The Magen Avram is referring to the halacha that when Sefer Torah, here in source number 8, we see Sefer Torah Shabala goes in. I say it's a Talmid Chacham, a Sefer Torah that goes out of usage. Right, worn out Sefer Torah. We bury it by a Talmid Chacham, and we also bury it in a Kli Cheres. Okay, and the Ran says, huh?
It doesn't rot.
Exactly, that's what the Ran says in source number 9. The Ran says, "Afal pishin gainzen right in the second line. Afal pishin gainzen even though we're burying it, we do whatever we can to try to give it some kind of preservation." Yeah, so that's by a Sefer Torah that goes out of usage. So that's what we do with it. We bury it in Kli Cheres, and it says in Magen Avram in source number 10, "V'hu adin Sfarim." The same thing applies to Sfarim, right? And the place can take this to mean all Sfarim, meaning any Sfarim, Pirushim, Biurim, B'chulei, not only so also the Sarfan, it's going to be also to burn them. Nearly Dehu Adin B'chol Tashmisha Kedusha, Dev B'chlal Lo Yisasin Ken L'Hashem Lekechem. All Tashmisha Kedusha are going to be included in this Isser. Kama Shekesavnu V'chulei, V'chein Kasav Rambam, V'mitzvah Leisasei, Simin Samachei, Shema Abid Kisvei Kodesh Ever Belav. So what did the Rambam? Because what did the Rambam say?
He said
Sifrei Nevuah.
He didn't say Sifrei Kodesh. He also then focuses on the Shem Shem afterwards.
Yefe. Okay, so now let's go back to source number 6. Source number 6 is the Rambam in the Yad, and the Rambam says over here, Kisvei HaKodesh Kulan, all the Kisvei HaKodesh, Upirusheim, Ubiureim. So that l'chayr includes basically everything. That all divrei Torah. Aser liser faisan oila abudam biyadayim. It's aser to destroy them. The hama abid biyad loike makas mardus. So right, which l'chayr is an indication that it's Durabanan. So this is taka machlekes a place how to understand the Rambam. The like we see the Magen Avram takes it to mean that it's Daraisa. If you look in source number 11, the Pri Megadim on the Magen Avram, the Pri Megadim says Masha Kasav Sfarim. Lawyer Isinayim came.
But the Magen Avram is saying that you need to read Ramish Kover and the Kli Cheres, or
that is in fact how the place can understand the Magen Avram. That all Sfarim need to be buried in Kli Cheres, and we'll see an extension of this in a moment.
Well, let's see.
Huh?
Let's see.
I think
See some
the
more
Geniza
development.
would charge more than 10 shekels a bag if you needed to put.
Well, that's
a
what they have
good
the special
bathroom.
Geniza. That's
So
much
we'll
more
get
expensive.
to modern Geniza in a moment.
Mhm.
Say there. So, but the Pri Megadim says Lo Reisi Noegim Kane. I never saw people actually do this. They've been to Berry's farm in Klicharetz. Ulai Neviim Uksuvim Shehem Ksuvim Be'or Udioi V'Glila. Right, and maybe people do this with different Neviim that are written like the Neviim that we have here. But I never saw people do this with farm. Yes, yes. Magen Avram is living in the 1600s.
Wants an actual act of writing. Is that what he's saying?
Bald.
Very good. You're touching. So in fact, it's good that you mentioned that because one moment. Let's. So I'll upon him. What do we see? So let's gather up what we have, and then we'll get into what you're discussing. So we have an Issa Daraisa on destroying a shame written B'Kedusha, and we see that Isser is extended, whether Midaraisa, according to the Magen Avram's reading of the Rambam, or at least Midarabanan. And Midarabanan also we could see in source number 7, the Sefer Chinuch says explicitly that it's only Midarabanan. That's also the Tashbetz. The right. Tashbetz is also one of the Rishonim, one of the Sephardi Rishonim. I think from the school of the Ramban. Yeah, Talmud of the Ran, I think, right?
Not the Rambam fan. Yeah.
So the Tashbetz also writes that the Tashbetz quotes the Rambam actually, and it says Mechiach from the Rambam in Yad that it's only Midrabanan. So Ba'al Kapanim we have machlekes whether or not destroying Sfarim, handwritten Sfarim from way back when, are going to be considered an Isser Daraisa or an Isser Darabanan. Yeah, so far so good.
Even if they have Shem Hashem written.
Even if they
don't
have
Shem Hashem, that's the question. There's no Shem
In other words, Shem Hashem in a
Obviously,
handwritten
Shem
sefer
Hashem
is
is
a Doraisa.
Hashem. Is a safer a problem if it
But
doesn't
without Shem Hashem, then we have a Shiloh Doraisa Darabana.
a Megillah,
might not have
a Gemara or a Mishnayos, the way they wrote Yud doesn't have Kedusha. Yud is not a Shem Hashem. Yeah.
Those are
Okay.
What's the
Okay,
Shem Hashem?
so-
Intermission?
What?
Intermission?
Intermission?
Yeah.
Any questions?
No.
Ravitza Kachan Inspector also wants to be mechiach. If we look back at the Rambam, in the second source that we quoted, the Rambam says that we can be moichek certain oisios that are connected to the Shem Hashem for the sake of being mitak on the Sefer Torah. Meaning, if you have oisios on itpalim l'shem milifneim are mutter to be moichek, me'achareim are also to be moichek, but the ones that are me'achareim, you're able to be moichek in order to be mitak on the Sefer Torah. Or in general, let's say I have a Sefer Torah, I need to make a tikkun, right? So I can be moichek letters from the Sefer Torah. I am being moichek kisvei kodesh, so I'm being mitaken. Right? Because I'm being mitaken, so then therefore it's mutter from being moichek.
Right.
But I'm being ma'abed. If we were there, it's what?
You can fix the
No,
Shem Hashem.
no. Shem Hashem is
Right? It's the opposite Malachas Machshavas and Shabbos.
You're not to fix something. There's an habit.
because I'm ma'abed al manas l'taken.
Yeah, so Shem Hashem is a problem of just to erase Hashem. But there's another thing. If you need to fix the building or something, you're allowed to go in a little bit and like take a part so you can put it in stronger.
Okay.
So it's not the same thing.
So Ravitza Zolchanan wants to be mechiach from the fact that we have a distinction between Shem Hashem and Kisvei Kodesh. By Shem Hashem, if I want to be mitak on the Shem, I'm not allowed to erase anything. Yeah? Meaning, let's say I have a Shem that's written in a funny way and it's a Shaila, whether it's kosher or apostle, can't do any mechika in order to be mitak on it.
I'm cutting it out.
Kedera and or
Cut it out and take another piece of cloth. Will do.
You're not allowed to have a Shem Hashem that's entirely on a matlis. That's a separate sugya.
Yeah.
Al Kapanim, we're not allowed to be mechik Hashem in order to be mitaken it, but we are allowed to be mechik Kisvei Kodesh in order to be mitaken it. So says Ravitza Kochanim, what do you see from that? You see that the Shem Hashem is daraisa, Kisvei Kodesh is only midrabanan. That's Ravitza Kochanim. So Al Kapanim, we see that the Pasha says that it's only going to be derabanan. Some place can want to be machmer that it's deraisa. Vizel.
If you had you're writing in a Sefer Torah, you wrote a Shem Hashem, and it was a shaila. If it's good, then you have to discard. You have to bury the whole cloth, or that part of the
100%.
in ceramic.
There's no tikkun. There's no
That's not
tikkun.
the money out the window.
Yeah, and a lot of time and effort.
Time is money.
You want
Source sheets are
sources?
over there. It's the
Here's
one
here.
without the helix.
There's a spot
Yes.
there. There's some,
Come have a seat. Okay, so so let's go weiter. So with the advent of the printing press, this became a much more pressing issue.
Terrible.
Stop the presses.
Oh, no, smoke. Insult, injury.
So in fact, with the advent of the printing press, there became a much greater amount of printed material, and this became a much more important issue. The Be'er Sheva, who's a Shabbos and Tshuva sefer from Italy in the early 1500s. So this is mamish right after the printing press and in the area where it was invented. So the Be'er Sheva already in the 1500s talks about the practice that people had of burning old Sfarim, which the Chayra is very, very problematic. And the Be'er Sheva, it goes very, very strongly against it. And that's the source that the Magen Avraham is quoting. When we looked at the Magen Avraham, and he's quoting the Rambam, that the and saying that the Rambam holds that Kisvei Kodesh is usher to be destroyed, he's actually quoting this Be'er Sheva. So you see that he's referring to printed Sfarim. He's talking about printed Sfarim, and he's applying the.
Sorry, when was the Be'er Sheva?
The Be'er Sheva is in the 1500s.
Gutenberg was what, like 1400 or something?
Gutenberg is 1460.
1460.
The Gutenberg Bible is was printed in the year 1460.
The Bible was the first printed book, right?
Bible is the first printed book, correct?
Actually,
It was only recently overtaken by Harry Potter. Right?
Say again?
Oh,
So okay, yeah.
Something about the state of the world.
There were different forms of printing. Maybe in China they had imprints or whatever, but modern printing, as we know it started with Gutenberg in the year 1460. So now, what is the status of printing? Is printing different or is it the same? So now I want to take a moment and show you a video.
Inspired by Smichas Chaver.
Inspired by Smichas Chaver. Let's hope that I have decent.
At the beginning, at the end. Sorry.
Give me one moment. Let me pull it up. Yeah, I'm going to skip through the video because it's very long. But yeah, but it cuts out an important part.
It's Gutenberg himself.
Yeah, I'm going to turn off the sound because it's just. Oh, you know what? 1 second. I'm not sure if I'm not sharing it.
Right, do a screen share.
Okay. I hope
Per person.
no, 1 second. I lost
It
my
was on the bottom of a different window.
yeah, give me 1 second.
How many
Sorry,
programmers
folks.
does it take?
Here we go. Okay, so now you can see the guy over here is he has these these big lollipops, so to speak, and he's rolling them in a pile of DI over there, and he's making sure that the DI is right, ink. And now what he's going to do is these are the letters, these are the stamps, so to speak, and he's going to put the ink all over the letters. Right. And so each one of these things was like a separate job done by someone else, in the printing press. That things can, right. So that everything can be done fast. Right. If you have one person who's
each page.
so, but this guy, right, you have a plate like this set for each
All
page.
the letters, right.
And you see he's putting the ink all over it. And then the next stage is to take a paper. Let's hope internet comes through for us.
Someone hotspot. Go.
There we go. So now he's going to take a piece of paper. So, but how are we going to make sure that the paper gets all the letters on in a way that's equal and a way that doesn't smudge?
It's also
So-
consistent to the next page also. You want them all to
There's a Gutenberg press. There's a Gutenberg press from the. So here we have this device, which gets the paper, and
hold to them.
right, we put the paper on there. It holds the paper in place exactly in the same place that it was, and we close the device onto the letters, and then we roll it in onto the press. And then this is the press. This is literally why it's called a printing press,
You pull
because
it.
it's in fact done by hand. See, now there's a guy whose job is called the puller, and the puller is someone who has to pull.
He's a big
Right.
guy.
Hence the pulling.
So he pulls it nice and strong. It pushes the press all the way down, right? And now we're gonna.
He's gonna do it again.
He's gonna do it again.
Oh,
We're gonna do it. So we do it once on this page and once on the other page, right? Equality. We have to make sure we get a woman up there. And now he rolls it out, and he picks it up.
and
What a
voila.
beautiful painting.
And here we have a beautiful
And you can
Two
consist
print like this.
This you would burn, but
right, but it mamish looks like it looks like a. Oh, I'm sorry. One moment. No. This is just
Gutenberg.
This is a recreation.
We're trying to bring.
No, he's
the
print,
Bible.
he's printing a book. He's printing Stama book, but you
that
see
was
that
how it was done.
that's how printing was done. So now, why is it important to have a look?
Somebody was original copy. You could see that the pressing on the paper was a little invitation.
No, this is okay. So now just a little history of
The evolution.
the evolution of printing. So this printing press was used from the 1460s until the year 1815. And this printing press could make 240 impressions in an hour. That's right. You just think about
Relative to
it.
a scribe. Think about relative.
Relative to a scribe, it's incredible.
So
Relative to modern processes, this is Gornish, right? So, but even with 240 impressions an hour, it still created enough of a problem that the place can start dealing with the issue. Now, in 1815, a fellow named Koenig invented the more modern printing press, which was steam powered and which worked with rollers instead of with a press. And the paper would go between the rollers, and the rollers would print on both sides of the page. With the advent of that, they could make 1,100 impressions an hour, and then with the newer version of it that he came out in 1824, 2,000. So we're talking about an exponential growth of printed material in the year 1815 itself, right? And from there forward. And so and obviously today with modern means and machines or whatever,
Now are very different.
methods are completely different, right? Okay, so that's the history of
Let's
printing.
talk about even that in the eyes of the place. The Gutenberg, like the classic.
So in terms of the Gutenberg, let's look at the Taz. The Taz is source number 12. And the Taz says like this: Shamati Oimrim she'ein bisfarm hanidpasim kedusha. Everybody together? Source number 12. And Shamati she'ein bisfarm hanidpasim kedusha kama nechtavim b'ksav. I heard people say that printed sfarm don't have kedusha. V'li nira she'ein chiluk b'zeh. It appears to me that there's no difference. Afilu im nomar dahavi chakika. Even if you want to say that it's chakika, mikol makayim v'chulei v'chulei. So okay, look at the emboldened print. Demali doichik it's a 8 al aniyar. What difference does it make if I take the pen and I put it on the paper? Or aniyar or if I push the paper onto the lead letters, both of them are considered ksiva. Right, and when we look at the Gutenberg press, so it really makes sense. We can understand what the Taz is talking about.
He was writing.
He was mamish. When you pull the press down, you pull that lever, and you're mamish writing. That's an act of
But then you're
ksiva.
bringing the paper to the ink.
You're bringing the paper to the ink, and you're pushing the paper down onto the ink. But that's mamish an act of writing.
You're not writing a letter. You're writing
Whoa.
everything at once.
In a chanami, but you're still writing. You're still writing. Not right, exactly. What do we have? Very good. That's the Mishnah in Yuma, right? The Mishnah in Yuma was that there was Yeshua pointed out that if you write all 4 letters at the same time, that's a mailing ksiva Shem Hashem, right? We have the Mishnah in Yuma that says that the fellow
And they didn't teach.
would not work for tefillin mezuzahs. They have to be considered. But that's a different sugya.
To me, there's a very obvious skill here, which I don't see mentioned that on the task. When you press like this, so the author's got no whether it's a hey, whether it's a yud, whether it's a chaf sulfit, it's just the same action. when you write the letter, every time you write a letter, your mind is telling your hand to actually
That's Lishma.
shape.
I would say Mechatesi that's
No,
tonight.
not only that, it's there's a connection with your hand and your mind and the letter. It's all connected. Yeah, there's no connection.
So the Chiddush of the Taz is that's not relevant. That's not relevant, right? That's not a relevant.
In other words,
It's not cogent.
He's saying it's a big pen.
This is
It's a big pen.
right? We're
No,
not
no,
talking,
this is a very big
Lishma's
finish.
already out of the picture here.
I wouldn't say Lishma is out of the picture. No, because the Rabbanan certainly are extending the Issur D'Oraisa to apply to something else. So that's why I started off with the Issur D'Oraisa where Kavana is important. Kavana certainly plays a role. But let's look at the next source. The next source will take it a step further. Where source number 13, source number 13 will take it to it.
There's no chiluk when you're writing Shem Hashem, you're writing the words there's no chiluk bichlal in the printed press. All the exact same.
Enochanami.
So with Sofrim Rock, they have special kavanah for sure.
Again, we're not talking about giving it the same din.
We're talking about giving it the din of kedusha of Kisvei Kodesh.
I'm saying there are many chilukim here, so there's no chiluk. So the Shvili says there's no chiluk.
Well, that's the Taz.
Chiluk.
No, so we already talked about we talked earlier about the difference between Ksivas Shem Hashem and Ksivas Kisvei Kodesh. Like Shem Hashem.
Other things that there is a chiluk between writing.
The only difference between them is that the difference between in Hilchos Safros is first of all is for Chashashot. The Taz himself has a kula in Hilchos Safros that a person when he starts writing a Sefer Torah can say Hinni Kosel L'Shem Kedusha Sefer Torah v'Chol Atzkaros Shabbai Hinni Kosel L'Shem Kedusha Hashem, and that holds for the entire Sefer Torah. And then he just writes and he doesn't have to have any. We don't pass him like that Taz. We're Choshes L'Chumra that we have to make Mekadosh Shem. But l'chayr, that's not germane to the discussion. I mean, the point of the Taz is that so long as this can be considered an act of writing, so therefore it has kedusha.
Why can't you be motzi the tzibur such a sefer Torah?
That's a whole aspect of the sugya which I left on the side, and you're welcome to research on your own. But
maybe research it while you're listening to that too.
That's good for the India. That's what I'm saying. What you want to say.
The best Shmuel says based on this Taz also, or his own take on the sugya, that we will be choshish for an isha that was misgareshes with a get that was printed. Now we're talking about these kind of printing. Yeah, when we get to the next source, we'll see that we've already departed from that kind of printing. But the best Shmuel says that we're choshish for. So Nachanami, they're taking it very seriously.
Why can't we say that all of the chavana is done in the person that makes the thing that you put in the paper? The one who makes
That's essentially
That's
what
what
the
I'm
Taz is saying. That's essentially what the Taz is. I know the typesetter. No, the one who.
The typesetter.
It's the one who.
No, the one who's doing the printing. The typesetter is
The
just
people who set it up. Because in other
Yeah,
words,
but that's where you have the chavana and the thing of.
But that's not the
making
act of
Shem
writing.
Hashem.
But that's not the act of writing, though.
Why isn't it? You have.
You didn't
It's
write
not.
anything. You didn't
Because
write
that's exactly what the Taz says is Mali dochika es et ala niyar or ala niyar la et. So, but it's the act of dochik niyar la et that's the act of writing.
Doing the writing, but I'm saying the chavana for what you were saying for like making the shape of Shem Hashem and everything. The chavana for that could be when you're making the letters that you are printing with.
That's I hear what you're saying. I don't think that's what the Taz is talking about. But Rabbi, I think let's go further and we'll see. Say again. Printed Svarm, all Svarm, yeah. Okay, let's see source number 13. Source number 13. It is the Aruch Shulchan who relates to printing, modern printing as we know it. So first of all, he quotes from the Taz and the Magen Avram that all hold that printing is considered kiksiva. And he says, "Kafi shanu" in the fourth line. Hine kafi shanu roim. I said fus kacho. Right, just like the video we saw.
So we still talking like Gutenberg, right?
One moment. Listen. We set up the letters like the page. Right? The guy with the lollipops, right? I'll call daf v'vatachat, right? You put the daf on it, everything gets stuck on it. And that literally is like siva. Yeah. The mali kaisav daf adiyay laklaf. V'zeh vaday, says the Aruch Shulchan. Zeh vaday, certainly. Da'ata sha'oisen b'muchni shemegalgel haniyar la'otiyot. Now that we use a machine that rolls the paper through onto the letters, v'muchni halachas me'atzma b'li sha'adam yaniosa, and the machine works by itself without a person moving it. Vadein zeksiva. That certainly does not have the din of ksiva. Certainly, we need a person to do the writing.
This was run on a steam engine. In other words, the koyak, it wasn't some guy sitting and rolling.
It was a steam engine, right? We're talking about the steam engine. That I don't know why he says that, but he says that certainly there's no kavanah for kedusha when a person runs the printing press.
The stam goy who's doing it is not being mechaven.
So we have machlek as a poskim whether or not goy in the prince farm, whether this farm have kedusha. But lochar it's going to be based on the same side that the Aruch HaShulchan is about to say. It says the Aruch HaShulchan mikomakim uvade kadosh. Certainly, farm have kedusha. Im lo kedusha sefer Torah. Even if it doesn't have a kedusha sefer Torah, avol kedusha mia yesh bahem, but also l'sarfan l'shtavish bahem b'tashmish bazoi ve'en savik b'zeh.
This really could do a copy paste for this halacha to tzitzit and to matzah. I mean, we also have machines.
So I would say that there's a clear distinction between these things and tzitzis and matzah. I would say like this. I think the way I understand Lania's deity, what the Aruch HaShulchan is saying, and we'll see this you started in a moment from Rav Moshe Feinstein. The Aruch HaShulchan is saying in Echanami, the dinim of ksiva that we talked about earlier, ksivas Shem Hashem and ksivas Kisvei Kodesh, we don't have here, but we still have a different Torah. And these are certainly have kedusha. So do they have all the kedusha of ksivas of kisvei kodesh that we had earlier?
Well,
it says
at the end of the day, you have a piece of unleavened bread coming out of the machine, and you also have a cloth with strings attached.
In a chanami, but over there we need a person. That's what the side we saw from the Sefer Yereim, that any time we have kedusha, we need kavana, and when a machine doesn't have kavana. Well, I mean, we could discuss whether the machine has kavanah.
I think that's Augustini's.
We need kavanah. Well, but we saw already from the Yereim that we need kavanah. Meaning, if you have a case where someone wrote Yehuda instead, that's stam kavanah. But Yiganes, but that's because that's from the same Yisrael. So that's a very good point that you're making, which I think Betzim is the same Yisrael over here. Meaning it's not Yiganes because there's going to be an Israel Mechikas Hashem, but it's because there's different it's different Torah and you can't be like them in the Bazar.
A Goyish Bible you can throw in the trash.
Not so pashut. Not so pashut.
No. Bible, we're talking about the New Testament.
Oh, the New Testament.
Right, New Testament. That's written by an apikoros.
Usually they come together.
I know, but that's written. The whole thing is written by an apikoros. The whole thing is written l'shem apikoros. So that you're allowed to throw out. But if you get
also the Old Testament.
I know, but it was the printer. It was printed l'shem being part of their kfira. The whole thing. If a min writes a Sefer Torah, you burn the Sefer Torah.
So wait, but there's a distinction between a min writing a Sefer Torah and a goy writing a Sefer Torah.
Yes, the goy is worker without an agenda.
If we go back to source number 6. Source number 6. The Rambam says like this, in the third line: Aval min shekasav Sefer Torah sarfan oisai imaz kar shabai mepnei she'enei mamin b'kedushas Hashem. He doesn't believe in the Kedusha Hashem. So when he wrote Shem Hashem, he wrote it as if he were just writing the newspaper, right? So but listen, being that his das is that, loin is Kaddish Hashem, the Shem didn't get any Kedusha. So now what? So what do we do with it? So now we have a Shem Hashem which doesn't have any Kedusha. So says the Rambam, so we're going to burn it. Why? Because we don't want to leave anything. We don't want to leave any Rosham from the minim in the world. But a guy that wrote the Shem, meaning there's no mitzvah now to destroy it, but we do have to protect it. We can't use it as a Sefer Torah because the guy wrote it. But we also don't have a mitzvah to destroy it. We can't keep it around because it's Sefer Torah that's possible. Sefer Torah that's possible, we don't keep it around. But we don't burn it. What Gaines doesn't mean to destroy. It means to bury it in the ground. right? And like we said, all the dinim of
Get
Geniza.
it out of circulation.
Yeah, so I mean, that's also to destroy it. You're not supposed to.
But it's not because there's a mitzvah to destroy it because it was written by a guy.
No, in the goy, it's also to destroy.
It's
it.
also to destroy it.
Right.
Also to destroy it. Right.
So there's another study with it, that just like a lulav, you take a lulav before you make a bracha on it, it's called zera kedusha. After you make a bracha on it, it has kedusha.
That's already
So-
saying a
so
different
if
part.
you
That's
say-
it. That's a different part.
So if you have an automatically printed, a modern printed sefer, not a sefer, a modern printed chumash, a modern printed divrei Torah, and no one's read it, no one's learned it, no one's used it. So there's someone told me this once. There's a study said that doesn't have kedusha.
There.
Once
So
someone uses it, once
Well,
someone learns,
well,
well, you're
it's
jumping the gun.
fine.
You're jumping the gun.
Okay, so-
But I would say that based on what we've seen up until now, the Aruch HaShulchan would disagree with that. Because the Aruch HaShulchan said that something which is written would disagree with it, and he would say that anything which is written has kedusha, and you're not allowed to be noig b'eminig bizayin.
That's what the Rambam says.
No, but the Rambam is not talking about modern printing. So you want to be mashve between the Rambam and a Sefer Torah Shekas V'Goy and modern printing. You're saying that it would have the same status.
Here, let's keep going. We haven't even hit these issues yet, and we're talking about them.
Okay. So the question is whether or not there's any nafkamita between printed sfarm and modern printed sfarm, let's say, and sfarm that were written.
Let's take a hold of printed Gutenberg printed Svarim. This is a bit of a machlekes, but there's a strong day
to say that
may
it
have
has the
real
same din.
kedusha.
That's right.
Right? So that's a machlekes, and Pashtus it's a derabon. That's it. There is where to
And
say
there's right.
There's where to say it's
L'chayra is
d'oraisa.
what to say that it's Rabban.
right.
But then with modern printed
now let's
sfarm,
take a step to modern printed. Now, how is
modern
the
printed
process
farm.
different?
So where we saw the
Aruch
Aruch
HaShulchan.
HaShulchan, that when he went and he said that modern printed farm don't have the din of ksiva, but they do have kedusha. So is there any distinction then
So treat
between?
them with respect, but you can't be out
But-
the Kriyas.
Well, he said it doesn't have a din of kedusha sefer Torah. And let's see source number 14. We could see a distinction that the Aruch HaShulchan says between modern printed farm and old and let's say handwritten farm. Davar shekedusha sekala ein laniach al davar shekedusha sechamura. Something which has lighter kedusha, you can't place on top of something which has more chamer kedusha. Ulehefech mutter, but the other way is mutter. Manichim chumashim al neviim. Right, we can place a chumash. What's a chumash? A chumash is one of the chamishi chumash Torah, which is written as a separate scroll.
by a sefer.
So we can place that on top of neviim. The kedusha is chumashim gadol min neviim. So says the Aruch HaShulchan, the Yerayli, it would appear to me, Dezeu b'chumashim ha'ksuvim b'klaf l'shem kedusha sefer Torah. Right, this is by chumashim that were written on klaf for the purpose of writing a sefer Torah. El nechlak lechamish chumashim, but it was right. It ended up staying separate as 5 different chumashim. They ain't by kedusha sefer Torah legamre, lenya likras by b'tzibur. It doesn't have kedusha sefer Torah. Va'af kedusha achasi, even though it's one level of kedusha, mikomakim covered tzibur and likras b'chumashim. Right, but we don't use because it covered tzibur. We don't use this for chumashim. But al kopanim, it has a certain level of kedusha. Kedusha sefer Torah. Right, when it was not written for kedusha sefer Torah, meaning let's say it was written as a chumash, or v'kol shekain sheksuvim al niyar. But certainly, if it's written on paper, let's say a sofer wrote an entire chumash on paper, so that's certainly. So we have kedusha sefer Torah, we have kedusha's chumash, which Batsim was written for kedusha sefer Torah, but it's separate. Then we have stam, someone who wrote a chumash but on klaf. And then lower than that, we have sheksuvim al niyar, right? And certainly b'chumashim anid pasim, kedushasim shava im hanavim v'im kol kisvei hakodesh. Their kedusha is equal to the neviim and all kisvei hakodesh. So what we see from the Aruch HaShulchan is that even though we certainly are going to be noyeh kedusha with printed sfarim, but the Aruch HaShulchan is going to be machalik between the kedusha of something which is handwritten, which has this entire hierarchy of what you can place on top of something else, or as opposed to printed sfarim. Printed sfarim, this hierarchy doesn't apply. Now, yes. Now, I don't want anybody to necessarily take a halacha l'maaseh from this, because there certainly are poskim that argue on this. There's Chuvas Shevet HaKahasi who argues very strenuously with the Aruch HaShulchan. But al kapanim, I just wanted to bring out the point that it could be that here we see that there's a makom to say that something which is printed has a different type of kedusha than kedusha of kisvei hakodesh which were written.
But he doesn't. The Aruch HaShulchan does not address the issue just trying to of Geniza. In other words, when it makes this quasi category,
So
I can't
when
be
it
noig
comes-
with him in the bizayin.
So okay,
How
so
do I
let's get
rid of
to
him?
let's get to Geniza. Let's get to Geniza. So in terms of Geniza, a modern printed farm. So the Shvus Yaakov, I didn't these sources I didn't print because they're very intricate sources. Let's just run through them a little bit quickly. The Shvus Yaakov. First of all, we already quoted the Be'er Sheva. The Be'er Sheva says that burning Sfarim that were printed is certainly 100% usher, and it's going to be usher. The Be'er Sheva wanted to learn it from the Rambam and Sefer HaMitzvahs that it's going to be an Isur Daraisa, and he in fact says that it needs to be buried in Kli Cheres. And that was the way the Magen Avraham also paskin that printed Sfarim need to be buried in Kli Cheres. Again, he's talking about Gutenberg printing. What? In Hanami, but the Magen Avraham, we saw the Magen Avraham went with the. No, the Magen Avraham doesn't hold like the Taz. It's got kedusha, but he holds that it's he also. Okay, Rabbi, so let's make seder. Rabbi, so let's make seder. Let's make some seder. Let's make some 1 second. Let's make some seder. We have the Rambam and Sefer HaMitzvahs, which said that Sifrei Nevuah are included in the Isur Daraisa of Mechikas Hashem. We have the Rambam in Yad that said that there's Marcus Mardus. We have the Magen Avraham that says, based on the Rambam and Sefer HaMitzvahs, that destroying Sfarim is an Isur Daraisa. That's the Magen Avraham. And the Hanami, but this is the Magen Avraham. The Magen Avraham says, based on the Rambam and Sefer HaMitzvahs, that it has an Isur Daraisa. Now, the Pri Megadim we saw argues on the Magen Avraham, and the Pri Megadim says that you never saw people being naig to bury Sfarim in Kli Cheres. And it's Sfarim Upasim to be buried in Kli Cheres. Okay, so the Shvus Yaakov talks about the following case. In the days of the Shvus Yaakov, they were naig to bury Kisvei HaKodesh in the basic forest, in the Jewish basic forest. Not clear if they buried them in Kli Cheres. They did bury them in Kli Cheres, and they discovered that the Goyim would come, and the Goyim discovered that they were burying not even parchment paper, and the Goyim would dig it up and use it for bathroom paper, for toilet paper. And so Mamash Sfarim HaKadoshim were coming Mamash Lidei Bizayon Gamur. And so the Shvus Yaakov paskins based on that being that the Sfarim are going to come Mamash Lidei Bizayon, so he wants to be matir burning the Sfarim. The Knesset Yecheskel, who's his son-in-law, the Knesset Yecheskel, they have 4 tshuvas back and forth. It's fascinating. On the one hand, their father-in-law and son-in-law. On the other hand, they argue with each other very, very vehemently. The Knesset Yecheskel says chas v'chalila to burn the Sfarim. It's mamash and Isur Daraisa. But the Knesset Yecheskel says that we can bury them in wood caskets if we don't have enough Kli Cheres in order to bury them, so we can bury them in wood caskets. And the Shvus Yaakov writes back to him, what's the benefit of burying them in wood caskets? You're not being ma'abed biyadayim, but the wood caskets are gonna rot, and all the Kisvei HaKodesh are also gonna. So Betzim, you're also bringing them the Bizayon. Better that they should be burned. Al Kapanim, these are the 2 main major sources. Legabe Geniza. Most of the poskim are machmir, like the Knesset Yecheskel and like the Be'er Sheva, that it's 100% usher to bring Sfarim to be destroyed, be a dime. But Al Kapanim, so what do we do with what do we do today with Geniza? So the Chevra Kedisha, they have 2 levels of Geniza. They have what they call Geniza Chamur and Geniza Kala. Geniza Chamur are parshias of Sefer Torah, Tefillin, and Mezuzahs that became puzzle, and those taka are buried in earthenware kalim, and they're buried in special sections of the basic forest. They try to bury them close to where Talmid Chacham are buried to be mekayim the halacha. And then they have Geniza Kala. Geniza Kala is they put everything in big bags, and basically they bury them. There's a landfill down in the south. There's a big wadi down in the south where they have a landfill, which is only for Geniza. Now,
also look places where they look for oil. They put them in there.
Really? Okay.
They make big holes. They don't fill them up. Why not?
I think so.
They sent they used to have something in they never used for it.
So there's a big wadi down in the south where they made a landfill that's special for Geniza. So Al Kapanim Machon Somet on their website. Machon Somet tries to find pitronot for all sorts of different interesting halachic issues, and so they have on their website they have chuvas from 5 prominent Datilumi Rabbanim and also Rabbi Nasha Klein on the subject of what to do with Geniza. From Rabbi Yisrael Rosen, from Rabbi Shlomo Aviner, Nachum Rabinovich, Rabbi Yaakov Ariel, and Rav Dov Lior. And the majority of those places, and certainly Rabbi Nasha Klein, say that basically in Pitaron. We don't have anything that we could do with. There's nothing else that we could do with Geniza with printed papers. They're talking about the Alonei Shabbat. There's nothing else that we could do with them aside from burying them. Now the question is, they raise the possibility of putting it in two bags and putting in the regular garbage. Regular garbage tends to in Israel does not get burned. It does tend to be buried, whether or not that's. But they're all Meira lahalacha v'loy lamaisa, and lamaisa everything taka needs to go to Geniza. Rav Yaakov Ariel raises an interesting possibility that we should organize and take all the printed materials that need to be thrown out and recycle them for the printing of Sfarim. Not sure exactly how that helps because Al Kapanim. How would that help? Because anyway, we're.
It's like erasing. Also remember something that they took off the old binyan and then when Hobbes build the new one, they knocked down what it was old. So
the question is,
you can do it the same.
You mentioned
didn't make a chilik between if the alunim were being read or not read.
So the Gabe so there's the Ramesha. Just two more points. So if you look in source number 15, I'm not going to go through it inside, but the source number 15 is a shiloh which was dealt with by a number of different poskim, the Netziv, Rabbi Khan Inspector, the Tzitz Eliezer, about before you print something. So oftentimes you print a few pages just to make sure that the typesetting is correct, that everything comes out is going to come out correctly, and then you go and do the actual printing. So they dealt with the shiloh. What should we do? They call it dapea corrected, or in modern Hebrew the dapea. What? Yeah, the press page, test page, fine, whatever you want to call it. So what about these pages? These pages are printed certainly without any kavana for learning, right? They're printed only for the purpose of being able to make sure that there's no mistakes, that the typesetting is correct. So the poskim say that Lagabe these pages, the Tzitz Eliezer, the Netziv, and Rabbi Khan Inspector say, and based on the Rambam that you focused on earlier, that a guy who writes the Sefer Torah or a Jew that writes the Sefer Torah, Shalom L'Shem Kedusha, doesn't have Kedusha. So they want to say that taka these pages, being that they're being mastered, that they're writing them not Shalom L'Shem Kedusha, so they can be destroyed and they actually don't have to go to Geniza. But again, that's an edge case which doesn't apply. Say again? Why the Tanai works? So if you look in source 15 in the bolden Ksav, so he says stam l'shmakoi, right? Meaning stam when we print things. So it's taka for l'shem kedusha. But when a guy writes it, there's a tzad to say that's l'shem kedusha also. Right, meaning when a guy is doing something for us, so we say adaita datzma udavid. But when a guy is doing something for himself, so then we are chayshish for the fact that there's a Shvus Yaakov that says that Sfarim printed by a guy do have kedusha. Al Kapanim, let's leave that as it is, and I want to close with the Vard of Rav Moshe, which is
one issue yet that you mentioned in the beginning. What if you get a newspaper?
So based on what if we have a newspaper, right? You have Yediot Achronot. So let's not talk about Yeted Naman. Let's talk about Yediot Achronot, right? You have Yediot Achronot, and in the middle of it you have a Dvar Torah from the Rav Rashi or Sivan Rav Meir as a Katava of Parshat Shavua in the middle of Yediot Achronot. So Rav Elyashiv Paskins, based on this idea of the Dapea correctin from the Yitzchak and from the Netziv, that being that the the Yediot Achronot is not printed l'shem kedusha, so these different Torah don't have kedusha, and they can be disposed of carefully. They shouldn't be disposed of with the different Torah exposed, but the newspaper itself can be placed in the garbage, and it doesn't have to be treated with kedusha. Rav Moshe has a beautiful idea. Rav Moshe says like this. Now, Rav Moshe is not talking about tefus or not tefus. Rav Moshe is talking in general about Sfarim. Rav Moshe says like this. We have two different types of Sfarim. We have Sefer Torah Shebechsav, where we have a mitzvah of Ksiva Sefer Torah, have a mitzvah to write things down. And then we have the rest of the Torah. We have Torah Shebal Peh. What is Torah Shebal Peh? Torah Shebal Peh is limud Torah. There's no mitzvah of Ksiva as Torah Shebal Peh.
Oh no, it's an issue.
Adarabba, right? It's Dvarim Shalein Likasev. Why do we write things down? With Veis Las is Lashem, which is in order to facilitate limud. But the essence of what this writing is for limud, right? And even the rush that says that a person could be mekayim the mitzvah of Ksiva Sefer Torah through these sfarim, that's because the rush understood that what is the essence of the mitzvah of Ksiva Sefer Torah? Limud. It's supposed to be something that enhances limud.
Like it says
So,
king, right?
I'm sorry?
Let's talk about Torah Shebechsav.
Rambam says in a Hanami. So this is in a Hanami. The Rav Moshe, I don't know which
being a maverick.
Rav Moshe is being a maverick. He's saying
To the Rambam who said different Nevuah as opposed to Sefer Kodesh.
that was the Rambam in
What's the difference between paper to cloth? If it's the rain, so there's no difference between them.
so it could be that the Rav Moshe would say that this applies in the Rambam. The Rambam was only so 1 second. Let's hear out the idea. Let's hear out the entire idea before we attack it. And look in the bold sav in source number 16. Dafka mitzad halimud sheitiru lichtov ika memela mitzvah gam ksibasan. There's only mitzad the fact that you're going to be learning from it. Is there a mitzvah to write things down? Hariza oisa sheyuchal lekayim mitzvah halimud v'im kain vaday akdusha shanas alas farm elu hunami mitzad shanasu lilmoid behem dafka. So the kedusha that these farm are endowed with is only mitzad the fact that they're going to be learned from. And when it's no longer shayach to learn from them, so therefore we can say that the kedusha has left them. Not only this, Rav Moshe extends this to the fact that
a little bit of a kiddush
a little bit, it's a huge kiddush. It's an enormous kiddush.
Rav
Moshe says it takes us even weiter. Rav Moshe says that if I have a daf Gemara that was ripped out of a Gemara, and it's right, so I can learn from that daf Gemara. But am I going to learn from this daf Gemara? Nobody takes the daf Gemara that they find right that's separate and sits and learns from it. Rav Moshe takes it even further. He says, what about a sefer of the Marsha? A sefer of the Marsha. Today you open up every Shas Vilna and you have the Marsha, you have the Rush printed in the back. Nobody's going to take a sefer of the Marsha and open it up and learn it. You open up a Gemara. So says Rav Moshe, all these things are no longer going to be considered things that have kedusha. Now, but look at the last paragraph. And this is, I think, very unusual for Moshe. Le'inyan Maisa, who bar etzli k'masha kasavti. Right? Everything certainly.
Moshe says a lot.
V'yesh lesser b'chol mashum sifrei tanach b'hem nimtzim shemos v'chem sidurim me'elu shemanpisim shemes mamish. Right? All those things certainly we're not going to be allowed to destroy. Avol misfarim shebeter shebapeh. Shehem Mishnayos, Gemara, Mishnayat Tamudim, the whole Sefer Rabbeinu Rishonim Achronim, Svarim Hanidpasim Mechachmei Azman, Chol Yachonim, right? All the monthly publications. Kishenikru, V'loy Shayach Sheyilmudu v'Ya'anyanu Behem, V'af Shayach Sheyilmud Behem L'Famim. Even maybe sometimes they're going to learn. Achbar Shelo Yilmudu v'Lo Ya'aynu Behem Ke'ez Dapim Shlemim Nami Mutar. It's going to be mutar. Avolas is Ken L'Maisa. The Davar B'Zeim Oid Gedolei HaPaiskim. Beretz Yisrael. The Gam Rosh Yeshiva. The Gam Gedolei HaTorah V'Yira Me'eda Charidis. Umei Asfardim. Kitzer.
Don't blame me. They're all going to come after me.
But there's a beautiful idea from Rav Moshe, and with this I want to close. I think also this takes it a little bit more to the philosophical and to the hashkafic level, which is when we think about it, when we take a step back, when we think about what this Isser of destroying Kisvei Kodesh is all about, the Isser of destroying Shem Hashem, our whole mahos and what we're trying to do here with Yiddishkeit is to bring Shem Shemayim, bring a dear l'tachtonim for HaKadosh Baruch Hu. We want to bring Shem Shemayim into this world. anything which is a printed material, which contains kedusha, contains the Torah, is a reflection of that bringing out of Shemayim in the world, and that's the word of Ramah is that as long as they're facilitating lima, then they're going to have kedusha. But al kapanim, I think that based on this, we can relate to Sfarim in a new way. We can see that they have some kind of kedusha, they have some kind of reflection of the Ratzon Hashem in the world, and Be'ez Hashem, we could be more careful about the kedusha of Sfarim.
For me, it's such a beautiful chabur, but I now that Moshe also told us another big side. Svarim are for learning. Svarim are for learning. It's not enough to have them on the shelf. You need to have them on the shelf, but they're not all that useful if you ain't learning them. So Ramesh is saying, what's their Iker Kedusha, these Svarim against Chiddush? You learn them. And I think that speaks for itself. Eli Yasher Koya. Thank you. Gorgeous Kabura. Rabbi said the next year will be at, let's say, 12:30.